Hey everybody, welcome to our Tim at 10 today. I am super excited about this topic that we are going to go over. Going back to the basics. Why going back to the basics is essential in order for us to move forward in our industry. Thank you all for joining me. Those of you that are joining live today, thank you for being here and carving out 1 hour of your very valuable time to be with us live on Facebook. If you're unable to join us for any of our live trainings, they are always recorded and available to you on our website shortly after we do the live presentation. But of course, whenever you attend live, then you do get those live instructor-led hours to help satisfy child care regulations and Texas Rising Star and CLI. Again, welcome everyone, and we're going to go ahead and get started. First off, just clarification purposes, this will be a 1 hour training today. The cost for the assessment at the end of the training is $5 if you are needing that certificate of completion for licensing or Texas Rising Star. I apologize that there was a little bit of some confusion with how long this training was going to be today. It is 1 hour, $5. I'm going to take total responsibility for the oops. It was 100% my fault. But just wanted to clear that up before we get going today. Couple of little housekeeping items before we get started. Like always, this training has been approved by the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System, otherwise known as TechPEDS. It does have a training ID number. Make sure that your personal TechPEDS Workforce ID number is entered on your Tim the Trainer portal before you complete your assessment at the end of the course. That way your certificate will be uploaded into your personal TechPEDS account and automatically verified. Now again, that only happens if your personal TechPEDS ID number is in your portal before you complete the assessment. Those of you that are participating live today, you do need to make sure you complete your assessment today in order for that to show up as instructor-led on TechPEDS. If you wait until tomorrow or you later in the week to do your assessment, it will not show up as live and instructor-led. So make sure you get this done today. All right. Just another reminder that child care licensing and Texas Rising Star clearly states that trainings must be completed in a realistic manner of time. The best way I have learned to describe that is the total number of clock hours that you complete in a single day should not exceed the total number of hours that you worked in that day. Definitely the total number of clock hours you complete in a single day cannot exceed the total number of waking hours there are in a single day. If you complete too many clock hours of training in a single day, licensing and Texas Rising Star is very likely not going to accept those certificates because they were not done in a realistic matter of time. Okay? Just want to make sure you are protected, you're in compliance, and you don't run into any licensing or wage and hour issues right there. Always refer to your local licensing inspector and your Texas Rising Star mentor for their interpretation of instructor-led training. Now, we are always here and available to answer any questions that you have about the training material. So, for instance, on today's training, those of you that are participating live, you can ask questions in the comment screen. You can also go to our website, timthetrainer.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can send us a direct message. You can also email or call any questions that you have about this training material. If you need more information beyond the scope of the training, or if you need additional resources to help support you or your school, give us a shout. We're always here for you and happy to help. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So the learning objectives for today is, number one, I want to make sure everyone is very aware of developmentally appropriate practices. And if you have not read Developmentally Appropriate Practices in a while, I encourage you to do a reread, all right? Do a little refresher on Developmentally Appropriate Practices. We'll talk about that here in just a little bit. My other learning objective for you today is, once again, really reflect and observe on some of your current practices in your school and be humble and honest on where you are in line and where we have gotten out of line with what is developmentally appropriate and needed to help support the children learn and grow according to brain science in an effective way. And this takes a lot of honesty, okay? It takes thinking outside of the box, and it takes everything you see in social media out of context in order to do that right there, okay? And then my third learning objective for you today is to really reflect on your professional development, your coaching, and your mentoring. And is it in line with the basic care needs that are essential for providing children a healthy environment to learn, thrive, and grow? All right? And we'll talk about that later in this presentation. Before we get started, many of you are familiar with our Words Matter campaign. I co-wrote this campaign with the Association for Early Learning Leaders. We launched it in April of 2024. But really trying to rewrite the script and educate people that we have elevated in our industry. We are no longer daycare workers. We are not glorified babysitters. We are not caregivers, all right? We are early educators. And I wanted to throw this at the beginning of today's webinar because as we have these conversations about going back to the basics, all right, I really want you to look at this from the early educator point of view, okay? We get a lot of pressure from parents, guardians, families. We get a lot of pressure from social media, about how we should do business, how we should care for children, being consistent with what's happening at home, the screen time, the parallel play, the consequences and the discipline. And definitely we need to be aware of all of that, but let's bring it back into focus to what we know is developmentally appropriate for young children and how they should be educated and cared for. All right? So I wanted to throw this in at the very beginning because you are an early educator. And what you do in that classroom from birth through 5 years is so critical for the success of that child. Don't ever, ever forget this, okay? Don't ever forget this. We do have some amazing resources that are provided to you by the Association for Early Learning Leaders. You've got a QR code right there on the screen. If you're willing to scan that or go to earlylearningleaders.org, their website is right there on the screen as well. There are sample letters that you can send out to your teachers, to your families, to your community, to your political leaders. Once again, really elevating the conversation and getting them to understand that we are early educators and we have to be treated differently and before we can be seen differently. All right. So kind of take a quick look at that if you have not already seen it. If you go to my website, timthetrainer.com, I do have a training on Words Matter. I basically just narrated the whole campaign for you. It is free. You can get a half an hour of training for doing that. I encourage you, if you haven't already done so, take a look at that. Get your teachers to take a look at that. It's something that we're very, very proud of. So the whole purpose behind this training today about going back to the basics and why going back is essential in order for us to move forward. You know, again, we get a lot of input from individuals and sources that may or may not be properly educated on what is appropriate for young children. And we get a lot of feedback on how we should be running our programs, how we should be running our classrooms, and what their particular child needs to feel safe and secure and successful. And there's a lot of bells and whistles out there right now that are super exciting that people tend to want to get attached to, people tend to be attracted to. But realistically, does it actually benefit the young child? Does it match their developmental needs? Does it match the connections that are essential to be formed in the brain? And this is where, we're starting to see that we have really lost focus in so many areas that in some situations we're actually going backwards instead of moving forward, right? So this is just a list that I have come up with along with some of my colleagues. We've had a lot of conversation about this. And this is basically what we're going to talk about today. And again, the purpose of this training today is reflection, okay? Be humble, be honest, really take a look at your classroom environment, your center environment, and really evaluate, is this being beneficial to the child? We tend to want to focus on what is beneficial to the family, to the parent, what is beneficial to the teacher, but is it really beneficial to the child? Okay, so, we've got screen time, and screen time just continues to be more and more part of our lives. We got AI, and a lot of people are using artificial intelligence to help support the classroom, help support the center. And look, I'll be honest, there is some really good and exciting resources out there that we can use. But screen time and AI will never replace human connections, all right? If AI and screen time does start replacing human connection, y'all, we are in trouble, okay? We are in trouble right there. Of course, the American Pediatric Association recommends that children 2 and under, there is no screen time right there. Children over the age of 2, limited to 1 hour per day. Y'all, there's a lot of research that backs that, and we need to pay attention to this right here. We're going to talk about the difference between parallel play and social play, and that kind of ties into screen time just a little bit in 2 different ways. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about focus on school readiness, standardized testing, and the focus on standardized testing, how it has created a loss in what is developmentally appropriate for the particular child that you're caring for, okay? We'll talk about the decline in self-regulation skills, which attaches itself to the decline in play. Helicopter supervision, both at home and in the classroom. We'll talk about that in this session. And the pro-social skills, where we are dictating pro-social skills rather than letting the child develop these on their own, which is creating a lot of issues in itself. And then the last thing we'll talk about is that willingness to adapt to individual children's developmental needs. This could be an entire training in itself right here. So I just want to talk about that at the end of this presentation. So let's go ahead and get started because we got a lot to cover in 1 hour. So the first thing where we have really lost focus, and we need to go back to the basics, okay, so that we can move forward supporting the children in our programs. We've got the overexposure to screen time. Now, once again, I just want to mention that the American Pediatric Association, children under the age of 2, okay, should not be exposed to a screen, all right? That is at home and at our licensed programs. All right. We talk about this so many times in so many of our trainings. Connections on the outside build connections on the inside. During that first 12 months of life, there are more connections made in the brain than the rest of the child's life. So that face-to-face time, that human connection, that building that secure, healthy attachment figure is so essential during the first 12 months of life. When we put a screen in front of a child, okay, we're missing those opportunities. And that screen is not going to provide the connections in the brain that are needed for healthy development, okay? Now, this is not anything new. We've known this for a really long time. We just can't seem to get this down, though, right? And screens have become quote-unquote babysitters, all right? So, not quite sure what your center's policy is on screen time. We definitely have minimum standards addressing this. Our child care minimum standards matches what is with the American Pediatric Association. So make sure that you're following that and don't give in to the pressure from, parents and families and social media, all of these bells and whistles and fancy programs that are out there. Y'all, face-to-face time, and especially for children 2 and under, and that's where screen time is prohibited according to the APA and the child care minimum standards. 60% of your day, okay, with children 2 and under should be face-to-face with a child. Okay, so really important. I do have some additional information and research on overexposure to screen time that you can find on my website, timthetrainer.com. So if you haven't checked that out, I encourage you to check it out. It's some really interesting stuff. And it's not just the children that are being affected by overexposure to screen time. There's also some incredible, scary research about what overexposure to screen time is doing to the adult brain as well. And that kind of leads me to the conversation about the difference between parallel play and social play. Okay, I got a training that is going to be out in January. We're actually doing this on Martin Luther King Day. We'll be doing a live training that will be right here on Facebook Live. So mark your calendar. We've got some incredible information on how you can share this with your entire staff at the same time, if that's something that you choose to do. But we're going to be talking about the importance of play. And when we talk about going back to the basics, okay, in order for us to move forward, we've got to do play right, all right? And there are wrong ways to play and there are correct way to play, okay? So for here, some areas that we have lost focus is, once again, the difference between parallel play and social play. Social play is when either two children or a child and adult are basically face-to-face, problem-solving together, experimenting together, having conversations with each other together, and it's authentic and it's open-ended. All right? A lot of us grew up with a lot of social play. Okay? It was the human connection right here. Parallel play, kind of like the picture that you see here on the screen, nowadays can best be defined as, that child sitting there by themselves looking at a device or playing a game on their own, right? And the biggest thing where we talk about where we've lost focus, and we've got to go back to the basics here, it's not just the child that is single with a device, all right? But it's the child being with an adult, and instead of the child and the adult being face-to-face, you've got a child and an adult side by side, and the adult is the one on the device, okay? And the attention and the engagement is not on the individual child, okay? So you can define this as parallel play in itself. What is the adult doing on the device rather than giving their undivided attention to the child or the children in care? It could be that the adult is doing an assessment. It could be that they're doing attendance tracking. They could be updating their food program. They could be communicating with parents on an app or some software. Okay? And all of these might be business related, but they're doing it on a tablet, and their attention is on that tablet and not on the child. And the whole time they're on this tablet, doing this work, the child is the one missing out on important engagement and important interaction. All right? So this is one area that I strongly encourage you to reflect and focus. Whatever it is that the adult is doing on the app, how is it benefiting the development and the education of the child? Is it benefiting the development and the education of the child? And most likely it's not. So we got to go back to the basics, all right? Where the teacher in the classroom, their time is spent engaging with the children face-to-face social play. That parent communication, that tracking information, y'all, we did it for 30, 40 years very, very successfully without electronic devices, okay? So definitely we want to reflect on that right there, okay? Now, if it is the child that's on the device, once again, they're missing out on a lot of important connections. Developmentally appropriate practices that has been published by the National Association for the Education of Young Children. This has been around for a really, really long time, but there is a new 4th edition that came out in 2024, okay? And it's a book that looks like this. If you have never read Developmentally Appropriate Practices, I strongly encourage you to get a copy of this book. You can get it from Amazon. You can order it from naeyc.org, wherever is best for you and your program. And if you have read this book, but you haven't read it recently, I strongly encourage you to do that, okay? I will admit, even myself, okay, I've read this book several times over the last 38 years, and whenever they came out with the 4th edition, I decided, might be a good idea for me to do a refresh and do a reread on developmentally appropriate practices. So I did that whenever I got this new book. I didn't even realize how far off I had become, okay, on what is developmentally appropriate for the children that we are serving. And it was a big eye-opener for me, okay? Not just my own individual practices and skills, but as a trainer and a coach, as an owner and an operator of programs, I was like, oh, yikes, we have gotten way off track. So, I've got another training that will be out for President's Day in February of 2026, where we are going to do a comprehensive overview of developmentally appropriate practices, and we're going to use this 4th edition for that particular information. So once again, mark that on your calendar. It's going to be a 3-hour training that we'll do live here on Facebook. But in the meantime, do a reread, do a refresh, all right? And whether you're a classroom teacher or you're the director of your program, share what you learn. And especially when you do see that we have lost focus and we need to get back to the basics, share that with the other people in your school. Share that with your families. The other thing I love about this book is that when you do have some influences from the outside, that is recommending that you do a particular activity or you handle a situation a particular way, this is a really good resource to be able to pull out and go, maybe not. All right, let's take a look at whatever the recommendation is that you're giving me, and let's see if it's developmentally appropriate for that particular child, their chronological age, their physical development, their emotional development, and it's a great resource for you. All right. But I do encourage y'all, please, please, please make that commitment to get this book, read it, refresh on it, and do that overview. Here's another topic of conversation that I bet a lot of you would agree with me that we have seen a significant decline in self-regulation. Studies have shown, and this is some study that came out in 2018, all right, that we have seen a 15-year decline, consistent decline in self-regulation, not just in young children, but also in adults. Now, that was research that came out in 2018, all right? Fast forward, 8 years later, and we're still continuing to see this heavy decline in self-regulation, okay? So we have to really drill down on what is creating this decline in a person's ability to self-regulate, a person's ability to compose, all right? And look, you can just go on to social media and every single week you see some story about a person working in a licensed childcare program that was not able to maintain self-control, did not demonstrate competency or use good judgment, and injured or abused a child in their care. Okay? And it's definitely not helping us as an industry. It's definitely not safe for the children. So we got a lot of people with a very narrow window of tolerance. Okay? It is time that we all work together because we've got to open that window of tolerance, and we've got to practice self-regulation, and it starts with the adult. Okay? Because the adult has to be regulated before you can co-regulate a child. Y'all know me. Y'all have attended many of my trainings. Many of you have been following me for a long time. One of the most important things that we can do in our early education programs, social and emotional development. That's why I am such a big advocate for programs like Conscious Discipline, all right? Because we have to practice these skills to support self-regulation, to support composure, all right? I am a certified instructor for Conscious Discipline. I practice Conscious Discipline in all of my schools. It was very successful. It changed our culture. It has changed me. Please, if you're not familiar with it, look into it. Give me a call. Shoot me an email. I can help you out with that. But it's so essential for everyone because we've got to get a grip on our ability to regulate right there. Okay? And, if you're curious about what you're seeing on the screen right here, we've got the 7 powers and 7 skills of conscious adults. It starts with, the skill of composure. The skill of composure says that you become the person that you want, you be the person that you want other people to become. All right? You're always consciously aware of yourself when interacting with others, and the power that goes along with the skill of composure is the power of perception. Okay? We have to see people, we have to see situations differently before we can get a different result. And the power of perception teaches us that no one can make you angry without your permission. Okay? You have to hold on to your power. Okay? People can't make you angry. They trigger the anger that's already inside of you. okay, or the frustration or the stress or the sadness or whatever that emotion is right there. Okay, those that you put in charge of your feelings, you put in charge of yourself. Okay, so hold on to that power. Now, getting back on track right here, the decline of self-regulation. Okay, where is this decline in self-regulation coming from? It's coming from the decline in play. And when we talk about the decline in play, it's the decline in open-ended play. That difference between parallel play and social play. All right? So we have to look at how we are engaging children in play in our programs. And we know one of the most important things that you can do in early education is to allow children to play. Play is essential for their development. I put two different quotes up here on the screen for you that I think are so awesome right here. You know, seeing children at play means different things to different people. Most everyone thinks play is fun, including children themselves, and it is, right? When asked in one study what their favorite activity was, 98% of children answered play. Because it is so enjoyable, many family members and some educators think fun equals frivolous. And that's not true. Play, in their view, is a distraction from learning. It's actually just the opposite. As more and more research shows the benefit of play, it is once again taking a front seat in early childhood education. All right? Think link between play, especially make-believe play, and academic success has firmly been established. Children's brains grow and develop through play. All right? Now, remember there's a difference between open-ended play and closed-ended play. All right? Closed-ended play is when you're basically telling the child how to complete a project or what the finished project should look like or what the outcome of the play should look like. All right? You know, think about it when we were kids, when a lot of us were young children. We went outside and we created our own play. We created our own situations. We created our own games, right? Nowadays you look and most play is based on something that they've seen in the media, whether it's a game, a tablet, a movie, a show, and children are just basically regurgitating what they've seen in the media. All right, that's closed-ended play. Even sports, and I'm a big advocate for sports when it's developmentally appropriate for the individual child, okay? But even sports can be closed-ended, all right? You know, if you're playing baseball, you start off at home plate, you hit the ball, you run to first, you run to second, you run to third, you run home. It's scripted. All right? So that's closed-ended play right there. Again, it's very beneficial, but it's not going to meet all of the needs of open-ended play. The other thing to keep in mind when we talk about the decline in play and the lack of open-ended play, we now have the most current generation of workforce, which is typically your 18 to 26-year-olds right now, which actually have some incredible qualities and characteristics. That's a whole nother training. But one thing we're seeing with this new generation is that they are the first generation entering the workforce that has been completely raised on screen time, right? And we have a lot of younger workers that don't know what open-ended play is because they've never been introduced to it, okay? Now, I'm not saying that's true in every situation, but it is true in a lot of situations. Now, what we got to think about here as early educators is that we have these incredible, fantastic, talented, and passionate people coming into our workforce, but we put them in a classroom expecting them to support open-ended play. But how can we expect them to support open-ended play when they themselves don't even know what open-ended play looks and feels like? Okay? So, from a leadership standpoint, y'all, you got to play with your team. Okay? You got to play with your school family. Make this part of your professional development. Make this part of your culture. Okay? Because we have to actually feel and experience that open-ended play ourselves. And even those of us that, are getting up there in the age, okay, we need to be reminded of open-ended play ourselves, because we've even kind of lost touch a little bit. So going back to the basics, and why going back to the basics is essential to move forward, we have to relearn how to play so that we can effectively encourage and incorporate play in our classrooms. I hope that makes sense to everyone right there. One of my favorite quotes, Albert Einstein said, "Play is the highest form of research." Play is the highest form of research. So, yeah, we got to get out there and do that. Some factors that have changed in play, and again, this is where I want you to be humble and honest, do a lot of reflecting right here. Children are not playing outside for multiple different reasons, whether it's safety, the fear of an intruder. We got ozones now, and we got ozone alerts, and all this kind of stuff. I get it, I understand it, but we have to incorporate safe and healthy play outside. And when children are outside, we incorporate a lot of open-ended play. It's the best time to get open-ended play. But bottom line is that children, both at home and in our licensed facility, is not getting adequate and appropriate outdoor play. Now, of course, in our licensed centers, we do have guidelines and expectations for outdoor play and our child care minimum standards. Make sure that you're meeting that. When weather permits, when weather does not permit you to be able to go outside, make sure that you're incorporating that active play and open-ended play indoors. Okay, this has become one of the top deficiencies in our minimum standards, is that active play is not happening when children are not going outside. So we want to keep you in compliance with that. Instead of playing freely, they are involved in structured activities such as soccer or art classes. Now again, these are beneficial to young children, but it's not going to feed all of the expectations for open-ended play. Can't be every single bit of it, all right? And then, of course, many popular toys are linked to television and films, which is limiting children's imagination. So I encourage you, when you're looking at your classroom, when you're looking at your activities and activity plans, how many activities and activity plans are focused on imagination and creativity? Challenge yourself to move away from any play or any projects that are linked to television, film, or media, okay? And even the adult, we've got to tap into our creativity and our imagination ourselves, okay? But we've got a lot of opportunities to go back to the basics so that we can move forward just in the way that we incorporate play in our programs. Other factors that have changed play over the last 30, 40 years, of course, y'all might remember back in the 80s, there was a TV movie about Adam Walsh. Those of you that might be a little bit younger, you might want to look that up, do a little Google search on Adam Walsh, but it was an abduction situation. So it kind of started the whole stranger danger movement, where we've got to protect children from being abducted, right? And again, very, very important. Very, very important. We want to keep children safe and healthy. But sometimes we've put too much of a harness on this, all right? And we are limiting the opportunities for play because of that stranger danger. So we've got to find the balance right there. Also in the 80s and the early 90s, parents started forming play dates, right? Where again, instead of a child going out into the neighborhood, instead of a child going to school and forming friendships on their own, friendships were dictated by the adult. We're going to plan this play date and we're going to tell you who your friends are going to be. That's kind of what happens in our early education classrooms, isn't it? Right? We put children in group care and we dictate who their friends are going to be. And how many of y'all have heard a teacher, maybe yourself, maybe someone else, we don't hit our friends. We're nice to our friends. And we make the assumption that just because these children are in the same classroom that they're friends with each other. And we got to be careful with that. Friendships have to be formed. They have to be established, right? And that's not something that can be dictated. So, that has had an issue with play in itself. And when we talk about friendships have to be formed, right? They have to develop. It happens through play. It happens through play. So, what's happened is adults decide when to play and who to play with and how to play, okay? And then, of course, we got the parents that are hovering over the children and micromanaging them. And that's where the telling them how to play, don't do this, do that, instead of letting them form problem-solving skills, those pro-social skills, we've kind of lost that. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, once again, we went through this whole self-esteem movement where we want everyone to feel proud of themselves and feel accomplished and feel successful. And absolutely, we want children to feel proud of themselves and accomplished. But once again, that has to be developed and not just given, right? And we had a lot of reward and punishment that went on back at that time. Well, if you're good today, I'll give you a sticker, right? If you go potty, you'll go to the treasure box, right? And again, we lost that imagination, that creativity, and that sense of play. We also had that nation at risk situation that happened, again, late 80s, early 90s, where there was a lot of study that came out that the United States was falling behind other countries. And so this is the birth of standardized testing, where public schools and charter schools and private schools, had to basically start teaching to the test instead of focusing on the individual development of the child, okay? And teachers were not able to teach children based on individual needs. It was all about the number 2 pencil and filling in the bubble, okay? And then, of course, we started having all the safety laws, wearing a helmet, wearing elbow pads, wearing your knee pads, basically putting a bubble around your child. And if your child does fall down and, they skin their knee, then I've got to find someone else to blame for that. Okay, and we definitely experience that in our license programs these days. Just look at your cost of your general liability insurance. When I was growing up, you fell down, you scratched your knee, you threw some dirt on it, you laughed it off, you moved on. It was our fault. We're the ones that fell, right? It's a little bit different right here. And like I said, there is some importance to all of these items that we just mentioned, but it has definitely changed the way we play and we allow children to play. So what we have seen from this is how children play has changed their ability to self-regulate. And when you look at the brain right here, you've got left brain, your left hemisphere of your brain, which is your very logical, concrete, black and white side of your brain. And then you've got your right brain, which is your colorful, spirited, carefree, creative, spontaneous side of your brain. And you've got to be aware of the difference between the two. The closed-ended play, the parallel play, all of these limitations on pro-social development the hovering, the structured environment that we've all just talked about is all over here on the left hemisphere. And we've got a lot of children that are dominant in their left hemisphere right now. Self-regulation comes from the right hemisphere of the brain, which is where we see the decline in play. Okay, the decline in self-regulation. We've got to reactivate and rejuvenate that right hemisphere of the brain, and that's the only way we're going to be able to enhance self-regulation and self-control. Okay, and again, I've got a ton of trainings on this on my website. We're going to talk about the importance of play on Martin Luther King Day coming up in 2026. There's a lot more to add to this. Hopefully this right here will just spark some conversation for you. And then this is a tough one right here, because supervision of children. The most important thing that you should be doing in your early education classrooms is adequately supervising the children, making sure that they are safe and healthy. Cannot stress supervision enough. But we got to get to where's the balance right here? Do we have too much supervision or not enough supervision? You know, sometimes I walk into classrooms that there is too much supervision and the child literally cannot breathe in one direction without being corrected or jumped on, right? You know, so we got to allow some flexibility so that we can have that open-ended play, but we definitely don't want to go to not enough supervision. Okay, so this is a balancing act in itself. So what I encourage you to do in your program is have some open-ended conversations about this. When we look at our supervision practices, do we got too much or not enough? Or do you got an equal balance? And y'all, this is going to change every single day. Every single child, what is the current state of the child, emotionally, mentally, physically, cognitive, right? It's going to be different every single day. And the skill of the teacher is that we've got to find that balance and have that ability to be flexible based on what's happening today. All right? So take a look at that. We've talked about the pro-social skills, allowing children to develop healthy friendships on their own and not friendships that are dictated by an adult. We have to allow them to form those relationships. And I go back to the 3 R's, the letter R, the 3 R's, you know, of relationship. You allow children to develop healthy relationships. And with every relationship, there's always going to be rupture. You're always going to have rupture, whether it's to children, to adults, an employee and a boss, a spouse and a spouse. You're always going to have rupture in a relationship. And the 3rd R is repair. And how someone repairs that rupture strengthens the relationship. Okay? We have to let children practice the 3 R's. They have to practice relationship rupture and repair. As adults, we have to practice relationship rupture and repair. And this is part of pro-social development, and we have to allow this process to occur. Okay? With that, we provide support, we provide encouragement in healthy ways. And a lot of that is by role modeling. Okay? So even as classroom teachers, when you've got 2 teachers in a classroom, you're going to have relationship rupture and repair. And it's essential for the children to be able to witness this, all right, in a healthy way. We have to be able to role model that, and that repair is the important part. Teaching the skill needed when there is a difference of opinion, right? And it's okay for people to have a different opinion. It's okay for people to have different beliefs and values. And we can still respect each other, even when we've got a difference of opinion or difference in values. And these are skills that have to be taught in your pro-social development. Okay, so this is definitely an area that we've got to go back before we can move forward. All of this is kind of building up to this point right here. And that comes down to going back to the basics and why this is essential in order for us to move forward. We've got to pull all of this together to create that adult willingness to adapt to individual children's developmental needs. We tend to want to put everybody in categories, and we want everything to be scripted, and we want an Amazon Prime expectations, right? And it just doesn't work that way when we're working with young children. We have to allow children to be different, and we have to allow children to fit outside of the model, because they are, whether you like it or not. That's just how it is right there. And the adult has to have that willingness to use different skills for different children. And I see with my training and coaching and mentoring, this is where I'm seeing a lot of the conflict, is that a willingness to use different skills for different children. And if you have a child that needs a different skill, it's like they got to go. And that's kind of the mentality that we're seeing right now. We've got to have that willingness to practice different skills with different children. And always remembering, children have to be seen different before they can act different. So that adult willingness to practice the power of perception. And if we go back to our beginning conversation on self-regulation, the power of perception has to be established before you can have composure. If you don't have the power of perception, you cannot have the skill of composure. So it all links together, and it starts with willingness. It starts with willingness. So what now? Okay, what do we do with all this information? What now? I encourage you, after you participate in this webinar, after you watch this video, go back to your team, go back to your coworkers, develop an action plan to address how your program, your classroom, yourself, you need to take a step back and see the opportunity to take that leap forward. All right? And it's that willingness to see that opportunity. I've got to take a step back before I can take the leap forward. And create that plan. Put it on paper. Get it out of your noggin. Get it out of your head. And put it on paper right here. Then you can focus on that professional development. Okay? And when you focus on your professional development, focus on making the most of professional development. It's not about just getting your hours. It's not about checking that box with licensing. It's about how can we get back to the basics. When we talk about child growth and development, when we talk about age-appropriate activities, fostering children's self-esteem, positive guidance and discipline. Y'all, it's not about checking the box, okay? Some of you are like, yeah, I've been doing this for 20, 25, 30 years. I just need to get my hours. I've already done that positive guidance and discipline training. Yeah, but maybe it's time you actually pay attention to it, okay? And actually watch and listen to what's being shared instead of what you think you have memorized, And that's where, again, we got to go back to the basics and retrain ourselves. Okay, and I can't stress this enough right now. And then hold each other accountable for the knowledge that they receive. Create that culture of accountability. Whether you're a teacher, whether you're the director, no matter what your role is in your program, when you see someone that is not doing something developmentally appropriate, they're not doing appropriate activities for a particular age group, they're not practicing positive guidance or discipline, don't just ignore it. Hold that person accountable. This is a team effort. It's a team effort. And we want you to create that culture of accountability. And then the last thing that I've got here, whether you're a director, whether you're a teacher, again, no matter what your role is, the opportunity to coach and mentor each other. Okay? And we all need coaching and mentoring every single day. All right? Things are tough. Things are really tough. All right? And I'm not going to say things are tough right now because they're always tough. All right? So allow yourself to be coached, to be mentored, and look for those opportunities to coach and mentor each other. And, you know, I say this so often. Tell each other what the expectation is. Show and model the expectation and then practice together. And when we practice together, we can go back to the basics. We can be reminded of the basics. And y'all, this, I promise you, is what's going to push you forward. All right? So, that was a lot of information in 1 hour of time. My whole goal and objective with this was to spark some interest, to open your brain, to be open-minded to reflection, and really be honest with yourself. Where do we need to go back? All right? Where do we need to go back? And how is this going to push us forward? And I think you're going to be surprised at how magical this is going to be. As always, we are here for you. If you have any questions about any of the information shared in this training, again, you can go to our website, timthetrainer.com. In the upper right-hand corner, send us a direct message. You can email, you can call, whatever works best for you. We are always here for you. I would love to hear your feedback, too. All right, now I shared with you what I came up with along with my colleagues on where we're losing focus. But hey, if there's something that you're like, man, I really wish Tim would have mentioned this, or I think this is what's holding us back and we need to go back to the basics on this, share it with me. I would love to hear from you, okay? But we are here for you if you need anything. Hey, if there's ever a training topic that you feel like you need or your school needs, and you don't see that training topic on my website, reach out to me. Let me know if there is a training topic that you feel like would be beneficial. I love suggestions on new training topics. I've been working on a lot of new material here lately, but I would love to hear from you. So please share if you've got something out there. Make sure you follow us on social media, either Facebook, Instagram, Tim the Trainer. We've got a lot of upcoming events. We have a lot of things going on here at Tim the Trainer. I'm so excited. There's just so much. We're going to be celebrating 20 years of training and coaching in 2026, and we're going to make 2026, year 20, the best one ever. All right? We're going to go ahead and post the link for you to do your assessment if you're needing a certificate of completion for today. Now, those of you that participated live, in order for that to be uploaded into TechPeds as instructor-led, make sure you do your assessment today, all right? If you're watching the recording, then, it'll be uploaded like regular. Okay? Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. I appreciate every single one of you. Keep doing your incredible job. Keep making magic. And I will see all of you again very soon. Bye.